Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rachel. Tonight, Nancy D. is coming to us from Woodstock. I saw her up at Gainesville at the Hawk Club about 2 months ago, and she had this exhibit on display. She's formerly the AA archivist for the state of Georgia, and this is her personal collection. And she's living proof that AA can make you a useful and happy individual, and I'm so glad that Nancy came to join us. Please welcome her to the podium.
Ooh, a lot of people here. My name is Nancy. I am an alcoholic. Amen. And this is not my favorite thing to do, but when asked to serve in Alcoholics Anonymous, I say yes, and I'm nervous. I'll calm down in a minute. I am grateful to be here, and Tim, I thank you for inviting me. It's been a long time since I've been to NABA. And we went by way of downtown Atlanta to get here, but we got here. I was a little irritated with my husband because he took me out all over the place, and it's really hard to be spiritual and mad at the same time. So, so I decided to just let it go. I get here when I got here, and here we are, and we made it for the 5:45 meeting, and it was a really, really good meeting. The bright spot of my life is being with newcomers and you people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was born in the state of Vermont, April 2nd, 1950, so that makes me almost 63. I'll do the math for you. And I was born to two loving parents that were good Christian people that brought two alcoholics into the world. My brother, who was 5 years older, was also a drunk, and I followed in his footsteps. My parents would drink maybe a half a drink, and my brother and I would finish it for him. I didn't come from a dysfunctional family. My brother and I were the dysfunction. I had no idea what I did or why I did it until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and started working on the fourth and fifth step. And that has given me insight into my behavior, and it has also given me the gateway to freedom. I've been sober a long time, but there's always room for growing. We never know where our inspiration comes from or our answers come from. And I'll share that a little bit later. My first drink was when I was 2 years old, and I was a cute little kid, crawled under the table, and when my parents were playing cards, I'd drink all their beer, and I got knee walking, puking drunk at 2 years old. I don't remember it, but I've been told about it several times as I grew up, and but I remember every time I was around it, I wanted it. And I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love with alcohol. I liked the burning sensation that went down and the magic that happens when it hits. And I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. And but what it did for me, it took me to places I really didn't want to go. I was dating guys that were 21 years of age when I was 12 years old so that I could get the booze. And how I ever made it through high school on time, I'll never know. But I was active in school. I was active in our church. And I loved life. I absolutely loved life. And I also loved alcohol, and I drank it every weekend. My brother covered up a lot of stuff for me so I didn't get caught at what I was doing. But the shame, guilt, and remorse that happens when you're doing things that I'm doing against my moral fiber, it piles up. And I took a drink, and every time I took a drink, I couldn't tell you where I was going to be. I didn't know who I was going to be with. I would wake up with guys I didn't know, doing things I shouldn't be doing. And again, the shame, guilt, and remorse just kept packing down there. And I graduated from high school in 1968, and I went off to the big city to go to hairdressing school, and I went wide open. I was drinking on the average in the late 60s, early 70s, the average of about a fifth a day. And graduated from hairdressing school. My dad, who was my idol, I loved him more than I loved myself. We had some words, and I told him if he interfered in my life that he may as well forget he had a daughter. And a week later, he died. And I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed. And I found a way through Alcoholics Anonymous from, Dad died in 1969. I got sober in 1988. And I found a way in Alcoholics Anonymous to make amends to my daddy and to clear away the guilt and the shame that I had and a way to forgive myself. And it was through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had an abortion in 1971. Because I couldn't see raising a child with a drunk mother, and it never occurred to me not to drink. It just never occurred to me. Then in 1973, I started getting married, and I also divorced every one of them. I'll go through these real quick. I got married in 73, 75, 77, 84, 85, 90, and 96. I was engaged and disengaged to 6 others besides the ones I took hostage. But I looked, because of all that shame and guilt that I was lugging around inside of me, I looked for people, places, and things to fill that emptiness. And I took a drink because I'm an alcoholic. I didn't take a drink to cover up emotions. I didn't know what I was doing. I took a drink because I loved it. I loved it. And I was always a happy drunk, except when you pissed me off. Then I wasn't so happy. But I would get 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And if you pissed me off and I was shooting pool, I'd hit you with a cue stick. I just, gone. You know, it's like I knocked out a few of them. But I have come to realize that I would always minimize everything into non-existence. Whatever happened to me in my lifetime, I minimized it until it just wasn't there anymore. And that number 3 husband changed my world. I was dating this guy, and he was pissing me off, so I figured I'd date Chico to get even with him. And we were drinking my first date with this guy, and we went to my home afterwards. And in any other story that I've told, I'd tell you he beat me, and I was with him 2.5 years, and that was it. In February of this year, I read a book called A Stolen Life. And it was by J.C. Dugard, who was abducted when she was 11 years old, and she was released when she was 29. And if you read that book, it tells you what happened to me with that number 3 husband. I was abducted at knife point. He put a knife to my throat and told me if I left him, he would kill me and he would hurt my mother. And so I did whatever he wanted me to do. He raped me. Repeatedly. He beat me repeatedly. He brainwashed me. He made me do things that I didn't want to do. And when I got to, and I didn't drink while I was with him because I knew me when I drank, because my mouth would get in gear and he would have killed me. He would have absolutely killed me. So we get our awakenings and our healings from different sources. It's been 30 years since I was with him, and this past February, I read the book that awakened what happened to me. And I stayed without a drink for 2.5 years, and I prayed to God every day. I grew up with a Christian God, and I always have believed in that God, and I always will believe in that God. Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to have a partnership with that God of my understanding. And so I prayed the prayer. And I told God, I said, I can't live like this anymore. I don't care if he kills me or divorces me. And at that point, he had his hands around my throat, and I was about to check out. And he let go of me, and I ran out of the house. And the next day, he filed for divorce, and I was free. I had nothing. By then, we ended up in Arizona, and a girl that I worked with told me when I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, her home was open, and she took me in. And Rose was my angel. I had my dog, my bicycle, and the clothes on my back, and I was free. I was free. And it was another year and a half before I took a drink. And I would try to tell people what had happened to me. And by this time, I went back to that boyfriend I was trying to get even with. And I couldn't find anybody that understood. They all told me I was crazy, that, you know, they knew me before this happened to me, and they said that person would have never allowed this to happen. And what I have come to realize, the significance of this relationship in sobriety is when I judge other people, it will come back to me. And I had judged other women that were in abusive relationships. I thought they were crazy and stupid, and I'd ridicule them in public. And when I got sober and started working the steps, I realized that that was an experience that I lived a judgment. And I try not to judge people anymore. I can't say that I do it perfectly, but I try not to. I don't want to live the experience. But when I couldn't find anyone that understood, I was so miserable in my own skin. I had no solution to deal with the shame, guilt, and remorse that I had accumulated from the time I was 2 until I was around 30. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I picked up a drink. And when I picked up a drink, I went to the liquor store. I bought $600 worth of it, and I took it home, and I proceeded to get as drunk as I possibly could get. And I remember thinking at the time that it was like I had never stopped. It was like I had picked up right where I left off, only it was worse. And I remember thinking that. I had met this guy Jack in 1972, and he didn't drink, and he really wasn't a whole lot of fun. So I didn't date him very long at all. But in 1984, it was becoming very clear to me that I was getting big problems with alcohol. I'd pee the bed, and I'd take my clothes off in bars, and, you know, things that just, you know, a nice girl like me wouldn't do. But you give me a drink and I'll do anything. I'll do absolutely anything. So I got to thinking about this guy Jack that didn't drink, and he lived in Georgia, and I'm thinking, you know, that geographical cure, if only I could hook up with this guy and move to Georgia, everything would be fine. So I got in touch with him. By the way, I had just got married, and I got married in February, and Jack happened to call me in April. And so my wheels started turning. And so I set Charlie, the one I'd married, up in his own apartment, and and I called Jack back, and I said, well, I'm divorced now. So he came up to see me in October that year, and we decided we were going to get together. And I came to Georgia and bought the land and the house, and at Thanksgiving time, and January 1st, 1985, I'm in Georgia. I'm here. And I thought this was going to cure everything. And then the problems started happening with him, and it was insane. Absolutely insane. And I don't have a watch, so somebody's going to have to tell me what time it is. He was a Midas trainer for Midas Corporation, and he traveled a lot. Thank you. He traveled a lot, and I got the opportunity to go to Alaska and all these places, and he was very closely acquainted with the president of Midas Corporation. So whenever I went with him to these functions, I didn't drink a whole lot because I knew that if I drank more than 2, I was off to the races. And so I'd behave myself, and I'd have all the jewelry on, and I mean, you know, I was like a chameleon. I could fit into anywhere you wanted me to fit, whether it was at the Midas convention sitting with the president of the corporation or in this shit-kicking bar with dirt floors. I mean, I could fit anywhere. You give me a drink and I could fit. And so we went to this, we went to the International Convention in San Diego, California, and we went down to the cocktail hour, and we went back up to the room, and when we got to the room, Jack's ex-wife, who was actually living in our house, called and said that, yeah, it's insane. That's a story in itself. She and I got along good because we go to the bars and leave him at home with the kids. But I got this call from Donna, and she said, you've got to find some way to tell Jack that his daughter and his son, her son, had been in an accident and his daughter was killed. And when the shit really hit the fan and I had to be sober, I didn't drink. Why, I don't know. But I arranged everything. I talked to the president of Midas, and he arranged all of our flights home. And this was February 28th in 1988. And I didn't drink for about 2 weeks. But then after the funeral was all over and things calmed down, I pitched the biggest drunk you could ever imagine. My last drunk was April 7th of 1988, and I stand firm in what I say. My last drunk was that date. My last drink was April 10th, which is my sobriety date. I stand firm in what I say because I'm a true believer that what God promises me and what I hear in these rooms, I will never drink again. As long as I do what I do today and get up tomorrow and do again what I did today, I will never have to take another drink. And for me, that's a comfort. I do this a day at a time, but I don't ever want to have to go back to the way I lived. Because my luck, if I picked up a drink, I'd probably walk into a bar and pick up another Chico. And I've sat in front of a bar sober, miserable, wanting that gaiety that we find in bars, wanting to go in and knowing I can't. And so eventually I picked up the kit of spiritual tools that changed my mind, but there were some other things that changed my mind. And this was another one of those angels. And I was sober. I was sitting in front of a bar. And one of my customers came in. Well, actually, I had never seen her before. She came into my salon, and she sat down. She said, I want to show you some pictures. And she pulled out these pictures of her daughter that had been beaten to death by a drunk. And I looked at them, and I knew. I knew that I would never go in that bar. I knew. I had never seen this woman before. I have never seen her since. But she actually walked in my shop, sat in my chair, and showed me these pictures and left. You know, God was working. God was working. Anyway, my very first, on April 10th, I had my last drink, and I believe I had what Bill Wilson describes as a hot flash. He described his spiritual experience when the room lit up as this hot flash. But I actually cried out to God. I actually cussed God. Saying, why? You know, why in the hell everything I touch turns to a piece of shit? I can get stuff and then I lose it. And everything I touch turns to shit. By this time, when I had my last drunk on April 7th, Jack and my stepdaughter left. I had no idea where they were. When I took my last drink on April 10th, I found myself laying in the fetal position on my bed, and I was completely separated from myself. I looked down, and I understood. Because Jack had told me that I changed from the very first drink, and I thought, maybe the first case. Not the first drink, but I could see. And I went back into my body, and I had that peace that passes all understanding. And somehow I knew I'd be okay. He came back to talk to me that day, and he's told me I had to do something about my drinking. And I said, well, don't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. I said, I won't drink. And he said, no. He said, you're going to have help. And it's like, okay. I said, I guess it'll be AA. And I had no recollection. I had no idea what this was. I went to the phone, called Alcoholics Anonymous. I got Hal Place in Woodstock, and they said that there wouldn't be a meeting until 8 o'clock next night, and asked me if I could stay sober for 24 hours. And I said, hell yeah, I stayed sober 4 years one time. I won't drink. So I remember it was on a Monday. And I remember thinking to myself all day Monday is like, what in the hell have I done? I have promised this guy I would get help. What in the hell have I done? But I went to that meeting, and I walked through the doors, and I remember thinking, and I was welcome. People come up to me, and they welcome me with open arms. And I remember thinking, if they only knew. If they only knew who I was and what I was, they wouldn't want me here. And I remember thinking that just as clear as if it was today. I sat in that first meeting, and I cried the whole meeting through. And I listened to what they were saying, and somehow I knew that I was home. Somehow I knew in my heart that I belonged here. And somehow within that first week, I cried for 2 weeks. I held my white chip in my hand and cut hair, and I did not let go of that white chip for 2 weeks. And that's the desperation. Thank God for the gift of desperation. Because I was so desperate not to drink. I was so desperate to find out how in the hell do you live life the way it is meant to be lived, riddled with shame, guilt, and remorse, and that incomprehensible demoralization. I don't mess around with animals, but I have messed around with some men that look like animals. And the way I felt inside that the dirt would never go away, I felt dirty. And again, we get our messages from a lot of different places. I was given a tape by Francine Ward, and when I listened to her tape, the magic happened. Because with her story, I figured if she could feel clean, then I could too. And so her story gave me hope. Just like everybody's story that I heard in here gave me hope. I knew that I had to do something different because my way just was not working. All my life I was self-supporting, I was self-sufficient. It was either my way or the highway, and that's why I was married and divorced so many times. When things didn't go right, I just said, to hell with you. There's more fish in the sea. I just go get me another one. And it seemed to get worse every time I went. I heard a lot of things in here when I got sober, and it said, they'd say, if you want what we have, you do what we do. So, I do, and will continue doing what works. I watched the old timers. There was a guy that went around and shook hands with everybody. Well, that wasn't good enough. I went around and hugged everybody. And those hugs fed me. I very seldom ever shake hands. And if my hugs will offend you, please tell me, and I will shake your hand. But I love the hugs that we have for each other in here. They sustained me when I got sober. Asking for help was not easy for me. It was a while before I got a sponsor, but I listened. I listened to what you said, and I listened to what you did to stay sober, and I just listed a few of it. Read the big book, write in a journal, go to a meeting every day, read meditation books, get into the steps, get a sponsor, pray, get active, get involved. Try to maintain an attitude of gratitude, and I'm thinking, what an order, I can't go through with it. And so I tried to incorporate a little bit of everything into my life every day. And I started writing in a journal when I was 9 days sober, and there has not been a day gone by in the last 24 and a half years, actually it's 9,010 days, that I have not written in a journal. I read meditation books every day. And I try to work steps into my life, incorporate them into my life every day. But I do it a day at a time. It's like, I can't do all this. They say, well, just do what you can do today. Do the next right thing. And it's like, oh, what a concept. I became passionate about my recovery, and my passion for recovery today is probably greater than it's ever been. I found out Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson were both born in the state of Vermont. That's where I was born. So it sparked my interest in the archives. And I collected for a while, and I sat there one day and, looking up at my stuff. I'm ahead of myself. I got involved with a home group, and they elected me GSR for 3 years. And after that, I was elected DCM for 2 years. And then I was sitting there looking at the stuff I had collected, books and notebooks full of stuff, and I thought, what in the hell have I collected this shit for? And it was not 2 days later when the state delegate called me and asked me if I would be willing to participate as co-chair of the state archives. And I was blown away. I was just absolutely blown away. At that point, the state archives, we didn't have a whole lot, and so whatever I had collected, I made copies of everything I collected. Whatever I had duplicates of, I donated to the state of Georgia. And since then, they've got a lot of stuff down there. But after a year of serving as the co-chair, I was asked to be the chair of the archives for 3 years. And for 4 years, I was somewhere in the state of Georgia every weekend. And while I was archives co-chair, I'm very visual, and so I started putting boards together with big pictures, and I ended up with 13 boards. And so over the last few years, I've kind of shrunk them down, and if you've ever seen the state archives display, I made my own boards, and I took them to Macon, 10 years ago. And they liked what they saw, and they asked me if I would assemble them for the state archives. I didn't get any pay for it. The only thing they supplemented me for was the material I used. And I put together 6 sets of these boards for the state. I just finished this display about a month ago, and it took me about 2 months to put together, but it's got more pictures on it than what the state has got right now, and this is my passion. We talked about the obsession at the 545 meeting. Well, this is my obsession. I love it. I absolutely love the history. Carl Sandburg said, if you ever forget where you come from, you're doomed to repeat it. And the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill learned from previous bloopers, like the Washingtonian movement, and that's why we have what we have today. In June of 1998, well, let's back it up. In 1989, I was handing out chips at the meeting on April 12th, and this guy he was shaking terrible. He didn't smell very good. Came up and accepted a white chip, and he's sitting out there. My husband, Raleigh. And we became friends. For about 9 years, we became friends, and we're both in bad relationships. So we're both getting a divorce, and we decided that we were going to try to get together and make it work. So we were married in the eyes of God, and we committed ourselves to being together, and it's not always been easy, but I am here to tell you it has been well worth it. I'm going to make a plug for him. He's always been there for me. He's my mate. He's everything. He's everything to me. And this year he has written a book, a spiritually based book, and it's awesome. I don't know. I'm just so grateful that you're part of my life and part of my journey. I wouldn't be who I am today without you in my life. And we've been together almost 15 years, which is a record for both of us. You put all of his relationships together, all my relationships together, and combined together is not 15 years. So we're breaking records. In 1999, that brother of mine called me, and what it was happening, I'll make it short, he went into DTs, and he couldn't understand what was wrong with him. So I talked to my sister-in-law. I said, give him a drink and take him to the hospital before he dies. They got him to the hospital, and he was almost dead from alcohol poisoning. And he called me and wanted me to come to Florida and talk to him, so I went to Florida, and he knew his little sister was in AA, and she really needed it. So I went to Florida and talked to him, and I read the chapter on working with others before I went, and I shared with him my experience, strength, and hope as best I could, and when I said the word God, he threw up his hand and said he didn't want to hear it. And he came to AA meetings for a while, and he bought the lie. He bought the lie that a beer wouldn't hurt him. And on March 17th, 2000, he put a gun to his head and blew his brains out. This is a deadly disease. And I didn't blame myself. If I could have saved anybody, I would have saved my brother. But the only one I can save is myself. And hopefully by sharing about him, it will keep somebody. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But I went right from the funeral to the Flint River Roundup. And that was the first year I displayed the archives there, and they loved me. I don't remember being there that much, but one of the speakers, Keith Lewis, stayed with me almost the whole weekend. And you loved me through it. I'd go to AA meetings and I'd hear the word suicide and I wanted to die. And there were times that I thought, maybe he had the right idea. But I don't believe it's my right to take my life, and I can't drink, so what do I have left is pick up the kid of spiritual tools. So I just kept doing the next right thing, and it passed. But you people held me up. You held me up and you held me together. In August of 2012, I had to put my dog to sleep. I had for 12 years. October 2002, my sister-in-law died of brain cancer. A week later, a real close good friend of mine died a week after she did. And then in November 2002, my stepfather died. He had 17 years of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. He died sober. And it left just my mother and I. So I had pretty much decided that I was going to go back to Vermont to be with my mother. And we talked in February 2003. And if I could be just half of the person my mother was, I'd be doing good. But she said to me, she said, no. She said, I'll sell my house in Vermont and we'll buy one in Georgia. And she said, I cannot disrupt your life. She was 80 years old. And so I went to Vermont. I made 2 trips up there and packed her house up. And then the third time, Raleigh and I went up, we moved her down here. And, but she said, you got sober in Georgia. You can't leave your support system. And she said, your business is in Georgia. And, she said, I don't want you to have to start over again. So the unselfishness of my mother, and my mother always gave me that unconditional love. I don't care. I went to church with her drunk. She didn't care as long as I was there. It amazes me. Absolutely amazes me. So anyway, we arrived in Georgia June 2003, and she and I traveled together. I didn't get in the car without her in it, and she came to AA meetings with me. She loved you drunks. She loved all of you. She loved being in meetings. She wasn't a drunk. She went to the roundups with me. We traveled Florida to see her grandkids, my brother's kids, and I took her back to Vermont every summer to see family and friends. And in June of 2006, she and I went to Vermont, and I went to New Hampshire to see a girlfriend, and I got back to Vermont on Tuesday night, and we played cards and had supper and joked and laughed and went to bed. And when I got up the next morning, she was dead. And it was the best 3 years of my life. I lost my mother and I lost my best friend. And again, my very first thought was, I want a whole ocean full of it, and I want to go right to the bottom because I don't want to feel what I got to feel. And my next thought was called 911. And my aunt and her daughter-in-law took care of everything. I just went numb. I just went absolutely numb. And we walked through the funeral. We had the funeral at the end of the burial. That's where she wanted to go anyway. So she was so unselfish in her life. She was still unselfish in her death. I called my girlfriend at 11 o'clock that night, and I didn't get off the phone until 5 o'clock in the morning, and she just sat there and listened to me. You held me up. If it wasn't for you, left into my own devices, I would drink. But you help remind me. How many in here under 30 days? All right. Honey, you guys are in for the ride of your life. You are in for the ride of your life. This is the most powerful thing that we have. It is one of the world's largest movements. We are part of a worldwide network. Is it easy? No. No, it ain't easy to feel all the stuff we gotta feel. But the freedom comes in working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's where our freedom is. I was in a car wreck this year in March. This girl I was going to save that I work with, she and I were going to an AA meeting, and we got rear-ended about 50 miles an hour. And it was just like God had put a bubble around us. I got slight whiplash and compressed ribs, and that's all that was happening to me. And I went to the chiropractor, got fixed, and I'm fine. And I was sick almost the whole month of September. I don't do sick well. But I'm still hairdressing. Had I stayed drinking, I would have lost my business. There's no doubt in my mind, because that April 7th, I did something I swore I'd never do, because I love hairdressing. I've been doing it for 45 years. I'm 62 years old. And if I live to be 100, I hope I can do it until I'm 100 years old. I love doing what I'm doing because it's a service to people. I serve. I go to work to serve, and I get money for it. I have clients that are 93, 85. I love them, these little ladies. I just lost my whole train of thought. Oh. That last drunk, I started drinking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at work. And I did a perm, I think it was somewhere around 7. I've still got the card. I don't really remember what I did, but you can hardly read the card of my handwriting. But I went home then. I smashed everything in my house. I was so angry. And I don't forget. I don't forget where it comes from. I don't want to ever... I got mad at him coming up here because he took the wrong way. But the kind of anger that I felt my last drunk, I don't ever want to have to feel again. It was rage. I was enraged. It says in our book, it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. I believe what's in that big book. I read the big book from cover to cover my first week, and I believed every word that was in it. There was no doubt in my mind that I was an alcoholic. There has never been any doubt in my mind from the time I can remember that I wasn't a drunk. And I tell you I was a drunk, and I'd be proud of it. I could drink any man under the table. I could. I had a huge capacity for alcohol. And how I could still stand upright and function, I don't know. It's by God's grace. I died from alcohol poisoning in the early 70s. The doctor told me that my heart had stopped twice that night, and I only drank 2.5 fists of liquor at the VFW, and then I went home and polished off a pint of Thunderbird wine, which is awful stuff. But they told me I did a flip and died. And they got me to the hospital, and they brought me back. And the doctor said to me when I was leaving the hospital the next day, he said, "Don't you think you drink too much?" And I said, "Yeah, maybe." And I went to the liquor store and bought me a bottle. I mean, God, if you'd been through what I just been through, you need a drink too. I did. I went right to the liquor store and bought me a bottle. The thing that I think has saved me over and over again in Alcoholics Anonymous is when I first got sober, I heard a lot in meetings that attitude of gratitude, a grateful drunk don't drink. And I mean, I was so negative, and all the committees that were going on up in my head, and they still can get going. I call them the Committee of Idiots. I would sit down and write lists, gratitude lists, every night. That's what my sponsor had me doing. It's like, I don't want to do it. She said, I don't give a shit if you want to do it or not. Just do it. The Nike, just do it. Just do it. Check it off. Just do it. And I had a list. I had my list, and everything I needed to do every day, I wrote it down because I was so screwed up in the head I couldn't think. And the only color I wore back then when I first got sober was black because I couldn't decide what to wear. So I just wore black. And as you can see, I can still not decide what to wear. I kind of changed the color of the tops, but the attitude of gratitude is one of the most powerful things, the most powerful tools that we have. And it has been a quick fix for different things that I've been through in sobriety. And the really most awesome thing that this attitude, this gratitude thing, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. All you got to do is think it. And the more you think gratitude, sooner or later it's going to travel from here to here. And once it hits the heart, you're full. It fills you up. But it's free. And it's simple. And it's a quick fix. All you have to do is do it. It's like, oh. And I would complicate the hell out of anything. If you told me to do this, I would dissect it. I would spend hours trying to figure it out. And then when I got to that point where my way, again, in sobriety was not working, I started taking the simple steps. And there's been a lot of things in sobriety that has happened to me that because of the work I've done on myself, I have been able to pass through. I don't butt heads with people out there, the normal people. I don't butt heads with them. I butt heads with you guys. And I've come up against some real trying situations. And one of them was when I was dating this married man. I never dated married men when I was out there because I couldn't marry them. And here I am sober. I was about 4 years sober, and I'm dating this married man, and I'm thinking, what the hell's wrong with this picture? But again, after I inventoried it and struggled with it, and I don't recommend it to anybody to do that sober. But again, I had passed judgment on women that got caught up and tangled up with married men, or were married and were cheating on their husband, and I would condemn them publicly. And so I lived the experience. And when I finally came to that, then I was able to let go. There was so much that happened in that period of time. My sponsor dumped me on my rear end, and I got ridiculed in meetings, openly in meetings, and I don't have anywhere else to go. Alcoholics Anonymous is my last stop, and I'm staying. I don't give a damn what you think of me. It's what I think of myself. And because of these 12 steps, now you gotta remember, I was only 4 years sober when all that shit was happening, and I wanted to walk out the door, but I don't have anywhere to go. So, and then when I was chair of the archives, I pissed off my co-chair, and she spread it all over the state of Georgia that I was stealing from the archives, and I still had a year to serve it. I'm thinking, oh shit. I didn't do it. So I would go to the podium and I would speak to the assembly, and I could hold my head up because I didn't do it. And the sad part of it is I do know who did it, but they have to live the consequences of their own actions. We're all held accountable for our own actions. It's called law of attraction. And whatever you put out there in the universe, I guarantee you will come back to you. If you're putting out good things will come back. If you're putting out negative and crappy stuff, negative and crappy will come back. The only thing I can do is just try to do the next right thing. And in trying to do the next right thing, I lived my way into right thinking. I have utilized what the Big Book has told me to do, and that's to see where religion is right. I've tapped into a lot of different sources for my spiritual growth. I do go to church. I did tell our minister that if I had a choice, or if I had to choose between church and Alcoholics Anonymous, I said, I'm sorry, I'd have to choose AA, because AA is what saved my life. And Alcoholics Anonymous is what brought me back to the God of my understanding, which is the power which sustains me. Without God in my life, I am nothing. And the big book says God either is or he isn't. And there's no middle of the way for any of us. You know, how it works is half measures availed us nothing. You know, if you put half of the energy into this that you put into your drinking, incredible things will happen. And I am standing here before you, and I can honestly say I've never rested on my laurels. I have hung on to Alcoholics Anonymous with my entire soul and my entire being, because I want what God has to offer me, and I am going to have it. And I am going to have it all. If you put 100% into this, you will get 100% out of it. Half measures avail us nothing. You put half measures into this, you're going to half-ass it. Bottom line. Suggested steps. Well, you know, it's suggested if you jump out of an airplane and you have a parachute, it's suggested you pull the ripcord to save your life. There are so many musts in the big book that if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths, you do what we do. And I had to follow the instructions in order to save my life. But I not only wanted to save my life, I wanted to save my sanity. At 2 years old getting drunk, I wasn't sure there was anything to restore me to. Because that's the only thing I knew was craziness. And, but God has restored me to sanity. You know, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is insanity. And I did that my entire life. I even did it sober. You know? As long as we learn the lessons, you know, learn as we go. And practicing these principles at step 12. I was a perfectionist when I got here. I had to look just right. I had to have the house, the clothes, the car. I figured if I got everything out here looking good, I'd be okay. Well, that perfectionist got me almost dead. So practicing these principles makes for progress, not perfection. And as long as I'm working the 12 steps and I'm making progress, I'm a long ways from where I was 9,010 days ago. A long ways. Where I want to go, I'm a long ways from attaining my goal. But I know the 12 steps will take me there. It has been through service that the greatest rewards are to be found. But to be in a position of offering true, useful, and effective service to others, I must first work on myself. Work on myself has taught me how to find the necessary peace and serenity to successfully merge inspiration and experience. I have learned how to be, in the truest sense, an open channel of sobriety. Thank you for my sobriety, and I thank God. And God bless you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.